This is the Backlog Exposed podcast, bringing you weekly discussions on gaming, as well as quick insights into sports, entertainment, and anything else that we can think of. To get in touch with us, ask questions, or just hang out and chat, join us in the Backlog Exposed Discord. Follow us on Twitter at @TheBacklogPod, or send us an email at thebacklogexposed@gmail.com. You can find all of our social media information, as well as many different ways to listen to our podcast by visiting our website, thebacklogexposed.com.
I'm Joe.
I'm Kevin.
And we are
The Backlog
Exposed.
Hey everybody, welcome to another edition of The Backlog Exposed. Today is November 4th, 2018, and we're talking about episode 24. And as we wind down to the new year, we are coming up on something that's pretty important to me. I've been talking about it every single week for the last month or two, and that is November 9th, PlayStation's delivery of Tetris Effect. So we have a special episode today for you. Special guest, my brother, Jeremy Lane, who, if you've listened to the podcast, you know, we've talked about him quite a bit because of this Tetris event coming up. And I call it an event because this one's a little bit more special than any Tetris that's ever been delivered. And while my brother has not been heavily versed in video games over the last century, so over the last 10 years or so, my brother hasn't really been involved in video games, probably even a little bit more than that. However, you can talk Tetris, you can go deep into that because that is something that is embedded into your mind. So we're going to get into that today. And before we do, and before I give a formal introduction to my brother, I want to throw out there, we are hosted by the Anchor app. That's Anchor. Anchor is our podcast host. They store all of our files and everything and allow us to deliver this podcast to you. They have a pretty awesome tool that you can download on iPhones and Androids. And it's just, you know, it's a podcast listening and a recording app. I mean, you can create your own podcasts if you really want to. And you can go onto this app and you can find our podcast there. And you can leave voice messages or comments, however you want to do it. So if you're listening to the podcast on the app, you can stop it and record and leave a comment. I implore you to do that because we can then take those sound bites and we can incorporate them into the podcast if we choose to. So it's pretty neat. That's a cool little thing. And, you know, a couple weeks ago, I let everyone know that I changed my PlayStation name, and out of nowhere, I got 15 or 20 invites. So I know people are listening. I know people are getting involved. So here's another way to do that. We have not had too much activity on our Discord or comments on our Facebook page or anything like that. Feel free to speak up, ask about topics that you want to hear, and we'll get into it. Joe has been heavily in the process of doing more important things in a podcast. He's buying a house. He actually just bought the house. And update, he can't be here today because he's painting and getting this thing move-in ready. So we are very happy for Joe. Hopefully, once he settles down in that house, you're going to see a more consistent appearance from Joe. Things are good. Things are moving forward. And just get involved, share, like, all that fun stuff, because that's how we get more viewers or more listeners, and all that makes it worthwhile for us to deliver this to you every week. So without further ado, my brother Jeremy, he is here. He's going to give us some sports rundown today. He's going to talk about things that are on his mind, things that keep him going. I'm going to ask him some questions here or there along the way. Here he is, my brother Jeremy. Jeremy, thank you for joining today. Sorry for the technical difficulties leading up to it. I seem to not be a good audio engineer, but hopefully it all sounds good now. So how you doing?
Hey, doing great. Thanks for having me on the podcast, and exciting to do something that is not changing diapers and kicking up the kitchen.
I hear that. So this podcast is specifically about, I mean, the reason Joe and I started it is because it's like, man, we have very little time, or less time than we would like to do the things we love, like play video games or whatever, right? Watch TV or shows and all that. I mean, this podcast is primarily about video games, but we dive into sports and TV shows and things like that, and whatever's really on our mind, because it's our podcast, we can do what we want. So when I think of people who don't have time to do what they want to do, you're the epitome, man. This is the podcast that is designed for someone like you, so that you can, I mean, hopefully when we have thousands of listeners, it's going to be people who tune into this show to hear what they need to hear, kind of like a news briefing or a, we're not going to talk about every single game that comes out or every single event that happens that's special. So we're going to concentrate on the things that matter to us And we hope that that matters to the listeners. And that's kind of what I want you to get into today when we do like a sports roundup. For those of you who are not Boston fans, Jeremy and I are. We grew up in the Northeast, and so we're super happy right now. I mean, our baseball team just won the 4th World Series in our lifetime. And, I go back to 1986. I was 6 years old. My brother was 7. And I didn't understand how important baseball was and how important caring about a team was. But I remember, Jeremy, I remember watching you and how impacted you were when they lost the World Series in 1986. It was
my first year really watching baseball. My dad taught us the rules. We got into T-ball and all that stuff, and watching the game on TV, and that was the year I went from not being able to figure out where the ball was going to understanding where the ball was going, right? As you're watching the game. So, I had never experienced a team not winning the World Series before, so I just assumed that was how it ended.
So, like, when they lost and everything, that's when I started understanding that this is something I should care about. I mean, I look it up to my older brother, and I see that he cares about this, and I should too. And so, when I see, Jagger get into something, and then Wesley immediately picks up on it and wants to do whatever Jagger is doing, that's the kind of stuff. It reminds me of when I was a kid, and the same thing kind of dives into the video games and stuff. I mean, we played a lot of like all the early Nintendo games. I mean, we had them all. We would go down to what was it, Daldrug, and rent new games and everything. And we ran the gamut on a lot of those Nintendo games, and I don't know, Dragon Warrior and Final Fantasy and all those originals that nowadays you see on these classic consoles and stuff that are coming out. But we were there for it, and we'd pass that controller back and forth, and you would beat, what was that game? Exodus Ultima, remember that? And when we beat that,
there was a whole Ultima series. It was one of the pioneers really in the RPG genre.
But do you remember Exodus, that a specific game? Do you remember the ending of that one?
No, because I don't think I ever got there. I mean, it just went on and on forever.
Yeah, but remember when we beat that, all it did was the screen faded to black and it just said end.
Oh, yeah, I remember there were some games like that back in the day. Yep.
Like you don't get any, you played it. That was the fun. The ending is, by the next game if you want to see more. But yeah, I mean, these classic consoles and stuff that are coming out, we've been talking about it a lot, but we got the Nintendo one, right? It has like 16 games on it or something, and it was $60, and we got it. Crystal wanted it. She loves those games that are on that. But I just see it as a ripoff, because nowadays it's a lot easier to dive in and play any of those games for free. I mean, I know it's not legal necessarily to download, but there's so many websites alone that clone them that you can just go to, and you're not even downloading anything onto your computer. So when they try to package up like a handful of these games and charge the price of a regular game, I don't know. I mean, I know it's cool to have the hardware. I know it's cool to experience that nostalgia, but they're not that good. The games aren't that good.
This whole idea pisses me off because, every couple of years they're forcing you to throw out your old console because, it's obsolete, and they won't, they force obsolescence with these consoles. You got to get rid of it because if you want to play the new games, if you want to play them well, you got to have the new machine. And then they come back a couple of years later and try to sell you back the old machine that they forced you to get rid of. It's such a racket.
Yeah, that's a good way to look at it. And I'm on a chat with a couple of other like podcaster type people, and some of them are like really into this stuff. They collect it and things, and I understand that there's a desire to do that. I mean, Joe is a big time collector. He has like 4 or 5 different Nintendo 64s of themselves, but that's his thing. He likes that. This stuff is not.
He's also collecting original material.
Exactly.
He's out there collecting, the original machine. He's not collecting a brand new minted in 2019 version of it that's 40% smaller and has all the games baked inside of it. I mean, if you're collecting something for nostalgia, then you're collecting the actual thing. I don't see how collecting a replica in the year 2019 is the same thing as having the nostalgia of being a collector of the original consoles.
I'm with you 100%. But that's the argument that some of these guys are making, is that, this is cool. It's like nostalgic and all that. But I don't feel like that's the market that Nintendo and Sony and all these companies are going for personally. I think they're trying to make dollars by selling it to the masses. And if it was just a collector's edition type thing, it would have a little bit more finesse and maybe be more expensive. I mean, if a collector's edition, in my opinion, this is my whole argument, is that for $60, that system should have every Nintendo game that ever was created. Because
right, because
for
why
free,
shouldn't it?
Exactly. They have the licensing. Now, I don't know, maybe there is a thing where every game they sell, they have to pay the developer, and they just don't, it comes down to that.
Oh, it's a bunch of bullshit. They could put 400 games on that machine, because you've seen some of these things that you can buy that'll sell like classic arcade games on a little mini console thing, and it's got like 700 games.
Exactly.
You can buy that around Christmas time from these third-party, retailers. So Sony's going to put out a PlayStation console with 20 games on it.
And I find that just to me, it's a ripoff. It's not upgradable. It's not like you can download additional games in the future. And at least on like the Nintendo Switch, and you get the classic console on there. On that, they make you rebuy the game again, right? I've already bought Super Mario Bros. From the regular Nintendo like 4 times, because each time a Nintendo system comes out, you can buy that original game for $5. I think it should carry over personally, but at the end of the day, I don't have to buy it. Well, at least on like the Nintendo Switch Online, they're going to update that. They're going to have additional games that you can download. But you buy this classic console, $100 for 20 shit games from 25 years ago. That's not going to cut it. And I hope that this trend, every time a new system is coming out, it costs more and more. I mean, by the time they have the Nintendo 64 Classic, it's going to be $250, and the system itself was never that much. So we'll see what happens, but yeah. So, anyways, getting into a little bit more of some news real quick before we dive into the sports and stuff. So, for those of you who listen who are into Fortnite, Jared, have you ever heard of Fortnite?
I played it once.
Oh wow, okay. How did you do?
How did I do? I just died.
Oh, okay. There you go. So Fortnite is for some reason, I mean, I'm super addicted to it. I'm okay. I'm pretty good at it. I'm not horrible. I can win, and Jagger's decent, so we can play together, and it's like a fun thing for us to do. I used to have a group of people that I'd play with, Jed, Joe, and a whole bunch of other people, but they've found a way out of being addicted to it, and me, I latch onto things, so I have all these other games to play, but for some reason, well, I know why. It's easy to go in and out of this game. I can play 1 or 2 and move on with my day, and not have to dedicate a ton of time to it. Whereas if you get into Spider-Man or something, it's a story-based game, and you don't know how long a mission's going to be, and you want to really get into the story. So you have to set aside a few hours at a time when you want to play something like that, and I just don't always have that. So Fortnite, they have these things called seasons now, where they've baked in this like perpetual desire to play. Each week there are challenges, and in those challenges it requires that you play multiple games to accomplish them. So they've come up with this, there's actually, Jed sent me a video. There's a scientific term for it, from like a how do you get somebody addicted kind of way. But like kind of, okay, so when you have a dog and you want the dog to learn how to go, or to remind you to go outside, you can set up a bell by the door. It's conditioning, right? Every time the dog rings the bell, they know they're going to get let out. So that's kind of how this game is set up, right? You're going to get a little bit of something every time you do a little something. Even if you suck terribly at this game, you're going to get something. You're going to get rewards, and you're going to level up. You could die immediately and still get experience points. And they build this game to do that, so that you always feel like a sense of progress and a sense of success, even if you suck really, really bad. So then you see they've built an esports league around this game, which, in my opinion, is as exciting as some of the football games I watch. When you see the true professionals going against true professionals, and there's no cannon fodder out there. These guys are going at it, and there's millions of dollars on the line now, and it's just it's nuts. And to me, it's a very exciting thing to watch. So these seasons are built around the esports leagues that they're putting into place. They're doing a good job broadcasting. They're putting events out there that have really good sets and things like that. So they're getting better each week. And this season 6, they've got a cube. And this cube has like these magnetic powers and things. And the cube has been there since season 5. It was delivered by aliens or something and causing the map to do crazy things. So all throughout season 5, you got to see the progress of the cube and anticipate what might happen next. And now in season 6, the cube starts reacting differently and breaking apart. And today, there was a huge event that occurred at 1 o'clock p.m. where if you were in the game, you were part of the event. And so Jagger and I joined up and wanted to see what would happen. So we got within distance of the cube so that we could see it just floating in the sky, you know. And everyone in the game, people could kill each other and everything. They could shoot, but most people were just like standing there watching to see what would happen. And the cube started glowing and pulsing and exploding and shooting lightning bolts across the entire map. And then it started glowing and then it exploded. And when the cube exploded, everyone in the whole game was, even the people who had died who were still like observing, they turned into little wisps. And everyone got to experience like this, you were in this like nether, like this, what's it called? Like everything was white. But you could see the other players as far as they were on the map. You could see them just hovering in the sky. Like everyone was in this ambiguous area. And it was really cool for a game like this that doesn't ever have anything like that. You know, it just kind of popped up and everyone's just kind of floating there in the sky and flying around. And I could go next to somebody else over there and we're all kind of just floating in the air. Jagger's laughing his ass off like he couldn't believe it. Thought it was the coolest thing he's ever seen. And then this like butterfly comes over, gets right in your face, and then you touch it, and then boom, everyone's launched into the sky and they're falling again. Everybody at the same spot, just falling down to where the cube was, and the cube is no longer there. And then it was just all out bedlam. Like everyone was right next to each other. Some people didn't have guns, some people did. Everyone shot each other. Jagger and I took off and we got to safety after I eliminated like 3 people right then and there. And then we took off and we got behind a mountain so that no one could see us. We geared up, we got some shields, turned around, came back, and we made the final 4. It was me and Jagger and 2 other players. And we almost took them out. And we almost won the one game during the event. It would have been cool. We wouldn't have gotten anything special for it, but it was just interesting how it all played out. And the way that they're building the story of this, who knows what's going to happen next, but now the map is a little bit different. And some of the things that we were experiencing in season 5 and 6 are no longer there or are less there, like the rifts and things like that. And I think they do a pretty good job of telling the story without really telling a story. I mean, it's just through these cutscenes or little timed events and things like that. But the game itself continues and moves forward. The cube, which was known as Kevin on the internet, unfortunately is gone. So Kevin is no longer there. And I'm sad because I felt like it was named after me. But without anything, without getting into too much more detail, because I know that we talk a lot about Fortnite here. I just want to say that I thought that was a really special thing. It was cool to be a part of because it's unlike anything that game has ever delivered. And I look forward to seeing them do that more and more, things like that, these mini events and things. I always wondered what they would do when games, big games are coming out. Call of Duty came out and it took their player base. And Fortnite was like a thing out of nowhere. Millions and millions and millions of people from all over the world are playing this game. And it's the most popular game in the history of all games ever. And you heard when like Roxio was getting Angry Birds and everyone's like, holy shit, they're making $4 billion a year on Angry Birds? How the hell? Well, now these guys are making way more than Angry Birds ever did. And when you make that kind of money, you have the ability to look at the data a different way. You can pay more people to help ensure that you continue to make that money. And it's a free game. You don't have to pay a thing to play it. And that's the incentive. And that's what gets people hooked. It's like, oh, I don't have to buy this thing, but I really want to look like a clown with a crazy face. So I'm going to pay $10 for that stupid thing. And yeah, so we'll see what happens next. I'll keep you all updated with the different events and stuff. But today was pretty cool. If you haven't checked it out, I'll probably post something on Twitter. There's a little video of it. It's about 3 minutes long. So there's that. I know in about 20 minutes, we got the Patriots going against the Green Bay Packers. And I wish Joe were here, Jeremy, because Joe is a Green Bay Packer fan. And I told him if he wasn't going to make the podcast, he's going to have to listen to us talk shit about Aaron Rodgers and the Packers. And then I stopped and said, you know what? If personally, I'm a fan of Aaron Rodgers. I think he's a solid ball player. And I had him on my fantasy team a couple of years in a row and did pretty good with him. So, whenever you have that, it feels good. But Dad mentioned that he was playing you. Is it this week or was it last week on fantasy football?
Last week.
Okay, who won that?
Yeah, he won. He did.
Okay.
Dad is he always loads up his entire team with Patriots. Like half of his team is New England Patriots. So you go into Monday Night Football up by 50 points and you think you're okay, and the Patriots have a big game, and of course every single Patriot that gets a touchdown and a point happens to be on his team. So bittersweet watching them beat the hell out of the Bills last week, and watching a pick six by the Patriots defense basically seal the game for the Patriots and also seal my fantasy team with a loss at the exact same time.
That's amazing. He called me up to tell me about how he was beating your butt, and he was all excited and giddy about it. So for the listeners, he took over my team. I just, when I get into fantasy football or fantasy baseball, every year I say I'm not gonna go crazy with it. I'll just try it and do it. And I'm a statistician. One of the things that I do in my work is statistics, Excel spreadsheets, business objects databases, or business objects universes, SQL databases, Oracle database, all that stuff, right? So when I see data, I see trends in data and I see things. And so I'm over here scouring the internet for every little bit of data I can, loading it into my own personal spreadsheets. And I'm like, after a week goes by and I get my ass kicked, I'm like, why am I spending all this time? And I can't help myself. It's not by choice. It's by design in my head. I just cannot do one year I tried, I'm only going to play with people who have funny names. And, I did all right that year, but it wasn't as fun. I mean, I enjoy it. I just don't have the capability and time to dedicate, especially in fantasy baseball, man, because there's so many players.
Yeah, fantasy takes forever. Fantasy football takes up so much time in my life that I'm wondering how long I can even keep it up at this point. And fantasy baseball is worse, way worse.
Don't you join like 5 leagues? I mean, you always are in multiple leagues.
Well, I like to have my hat in a few different rings. You know what I'm saying? I want a couple of different shots. But
that way, if you lose one day on one game, you win on the other and you feel good.
Yeah, certain players, you're not sure how you feel about them. You want to take a risk, but you don't want to necessarily have it sink your entire fantasy football season. So it's good to have a couple different, it's like diversifying with stocks,
Yeah, exactly. Hey, so, okay, I know you don't really watch UFC, right? Yeah. Do you follow it at all?
I wouldn't be able to name the people, but I'm aware of what's happening.
Yeah, but like you don't care who's the champion or whatever, right? You're not into like rooting for Conor. Okay. So, I've just noticed such a trend with UFC. In the years prior, they were super excited about being the top dog in the MMA world. And I had a lot of friends who were into UFC, and we would go watch it. Or if you went out to like the bar to watch it, it'd just be packed. I mean, just absolutely packed. And something has changed over the last couple of years. I mean, they've sold themselves. They got bought out by WME for billions of dollars, which was way overvalued, in my opinion. And so now it's just like the players in the game are just a bit different. So I don't get into it as much. I mean, I'm not as heavily invested. This week there was UFC 230, and I was pretty excited because one of my favorites, his name was Derek Lewis, and I've talked about him a little bit in the past. He's hilarious. He's one of those guys who will fight till he has no gas in the tank, and then he'll knock you out. And his last victory, which was just a month ago, put him in the title contention, where he fought 3 rounds, and he got beat for 2 rounds and all the way up to the last 10 seconds. He was getting absolutely manhandled by this other guy, and he just launched a haymaker, caught the guy at the last 10 seconds, and pummeled him to the ground, bounced his head off the mat, and won the match. So they gave him a title shot against Daniel Cormier, and for some reason I'm not a huge fan of Daniel Cormier, well as a lot of people like him. And Daniel Cormier just basically, Derek Lewis has no cardio. That's his whole thing. He has no cardio at all. So DC took him down, literally put his hand over the guy's mouth to suffocate him, and Derek Lewis couldn't do anything. He made it through one round, came back in the second round, just got taken down. It was a pretty sick takedown, little heel hook, dropped him. Daniel Cormier jumped on his back, choked him out, and it was like a lackluster performance from Derek Lewis, who gives like the funniest post-fight speeches and things. So I was hoping to hear him talk again, but now they're setting up the Daniel Cormier versus Brock Lesnar, who I think he just won the belt again or something in the WWE. So
yeah,
so they're trying to share his stock with with the UFC, trying to get more people to be involved, I guess. And who knows? I don't know if he'll actually make it, because he still has to be cleared by USADA, because he got caught doing steroids. So but we'll see if he even makes it. But they're talking about it. I know Dana White wants Brock back, and he was supposed to come back last year. John Jones was supposed to fight him, and then John Jones got hit with the steroids. At the same time, they both got hit with the same steroids, so they're probably doing them together. Who knows? But looks like DC versus Brock next, and if that doesn't happen, DC says he wants John Jones, and we know how that's gone the first two times. John Jones beat the shit out of him and would probably do it again. So I hope that happens, and I hope we see John Jones come back and just take out DC, because I'm not a big fan of him. Another fight on the card to talk about, Chris Weidman. He got knocked the fuck out by Jacare Souza. It was all Chris Weidman up until the swing and the hit. Took him down like a tree. Literally, he just fell back. The referee, Dan Miragliotta, just did not stop the fight. It was an absolute clean, clear knockout. The guy fell like a tree, hands over his heads, and the ref didn't stop the fight. So then Jacare had to punch the guy 2 more times before he stopped it. And he was pissed off because he and Weidman have respect for each other and didn't want to hurt him or anything. I mean, that's what a referee's job is. And this guy's done this so many times, this Dan Miragliotta dude. So it's just kind of embarrassing. Anyways, those are the...
Let me ask you a question about that, because I've seen that situation a couple different times. And, usually you end up seeing the post-fight interview. The winner is usually the most pissed off person, because he had to punch somebody else extra times when it wasn't necessary.
And that's exactly what happened
usually
here.
These guys, they don't want to do that to each other.
Correct. Yeah.
So here's my question.
Yeah.
And it's not that I don't trust these guys when they're doing these post-fight interviews. They say, I didn't want to have to hit this guy. I got respect for him. They should have stopped the fight. If you think the guy's knocked out and you're hurting somebody that's already, that's already done, why do they still have to curl up the fist and sock him right in the jaw? I mean, why not just pepper him with a couple of body blows or something? Hit him in the gut a few times, because if you're just pounding a guy and he's not defending himself with a couple of quick strikes, the referee usually jumps in and stops the fight because of the not defending yourself rule. You know what I mean? So why do they have to keep giving the guy a concussion?
So this is what these guys do. They train to absolutely maul their opponents, and their instinct when they swing is to swing for the fences, or to pick people apart with jabs and things like that. But when they're going for knockouts, they're going for knockouts. Now, in the heat of the moment, we're talking 3 to 5 seconds total, right? So he hits the guy goes down like a tree, and he stands over him. He knew in this instance that he knocked that guy out, so he did not go in for additional punches. The referee didn't call the fight, so he turned to the referee and said, "What the fuck?" The referee said, waved it and said, "Keep going." And in that 3 to 5 seconds, Chris Weidman started to recover. Not good. I mean, he didn't recover in any way, shape, or form that would have secured a victory, but he started grabbing Jacare's leg to take Jacare down. So while it was a clear-cut knockout, these fighters have instinct to defend and to curl up. So they could be completely eyes rolled in their head, and their arms are still doing something. It's been trained in them for many, many years. So they have to do, and I've seen it where guys have taken it easy, and then the fight turns around and then the other guy wins. So they have to go until the referee stops them. They have to trust in the referee that the referee is making the right decision, even if Jacare didn't think this was the right decision. But also, in this instance as well, Jacare did not hit Chris with anything significant after that. He popped him in the head like 3 times or 2 times with like not the mustard. You know, he didn't hit him super hard. He just tap, and the referee called it at that point. Because the referee knew right away that he should have called the fight, and he didn't. So it was like, keep going. And then Jacare, the second Jacare touched him, he stepped in. But Jacare should not have had to do that. It should have been one of the coolest looking knockouts in history because he just popped him and the guy fell like a tree. And that should be the highlight reel. But instead you got, then he has to go in and dive in and hit him twice and call it a day. So yeah, you're right. I mean, the main reason is because you never know. I've seen a guy play stupid. One guy's popped him and he pretended to be hurt. So the other guy like came in for the kill and then boom, left hook, knocked him out. And then the guy who got popped won. So these guys just they're supposed to be able to trust that the referee's making the right decision. And so if the referee says keep going and you don't feel that's the right thing to do, you could take the loss or you just keep going until the referee calls it. It just sucks that when you have a referee like this who doesn't do it because you don't want to see anybody get messed up. You want to see these fighters back in the cage. So long story short, it sucks, but they got to keep going until the referee says stop.
Makes sense.
Yeah, we have, let's see, 2 things to talk about. One, I want to give you the opportunity to give the floor to give us a roundup of kind of what's going on in sports outside of the UFC, because that's all I really know enough of. I know football, but I don't know So what you got for us? What do we have? What should we be paying attention to right now?
Well, a couple of things, and one of it's kind of a recap. As far as like what's coming up, the NFL season, obviously you're about to head into November here, and this is when the NFL season really starts to cook. And, there's been a couple of years in the past 5 years here where you said there's really only 1 or 2 teams that feels like it's got a shot. And this time around, the NFL really has several teams that are really, really good. And on any given day, any one of these 5 or 6 teams would really be the best team on the field. I mean, when you talk about the Rams, you're talking about the Saints. Obviously, the Patriots are always going to be in that conversation until somebody proves that they're not. You talk about the Chiefs, who just look like an absolute monster this year. And lately, you got to throw Carolina into this mix as well. And there are some other teams as well that are really just really looking good. You can't discount Pittsburgh. They're always in there. So I think that the NFL playoffs this year is really going to be a lot more dynamic than the last several years, where it's kind of almost been a foregone conclusion, at least in one half of the league or the other, who's going to end up making the Super Bowl. But when it comes to sports, something that's really been was really on my mind this past couple of weeks. The sport of baseball. I wanted to ask you guys, how long does it take to play a game of MLB The Show? Because, I'm looking it up online and I'm trying to find out, it's been like, as we talked about, it's been a while since I've been able to have, the time that I would like to have, be able to play a full season of a video sports game.
Yeah, we talked about this actually.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, one of the things that we used to play baseball games religiously all of our lives. And I had to stop because of how long it truly takes. I mean, if you're going to be playing MLB The Show, these games, you can play them so that they take as long as a regular baseball game. You can speed it up. I mean, you can skip the cutscenes and everything, and you can simulate half the most of the season. You can simulate games you don't feel like playing. So you can get through a season. Say you go on vacation, you don't want to make up the 3 games while you were out. You can simulate all that. But if you want to play to truly get the stats of your hands on that controller, the games are going to take 45 minutes to an hour and a half each game.
45 minutes to an hour and a half, that's a long time to give something, right?
In my opinion,
my point is that that's actually a reasonable amount of time when you consider the video game world versus the sports world. and the demand. So, when you talk about, wanting to keep up with things, like why is there even a backlog for our lives? There's two reasons. One is because, you've got, life as you get older, it gives you less time to dedicate to all the things that are, you spend more time on the things that you need and less time on the things that you want. But at least with the world of video games, they're getting smarter about making it possible, making it something that you can do and want to do, and attracting you to do these things. So, that Fortnite example that you did earlier, that's a perfect example of understanding that the world is not going to be the same day in and day out, looking at your product and saying, what can we do to make sure that we're marketing ourselves, that we're making participation in our product an experience that is offering the consumer enough incentive that they will drop what they are doing and spend the time to participate, even though there's a backlog of things going on in their lives that they want to get to.
Yep.
And if you're not thinking that way, you're not going to be at the top of people's to-do list. So I look at, let me tell you something. I'm a diehard, lifelong Red Sox fan who just watched the Red Sox win the World Series, and my biggest takeaway from it is that I'm not sure I can watch baseball anymore. I'm watching
because of that 18-inning game and all that. I mean, it's crazy how much time it takes.
Absolutely. I got a baseball game that doesn't start until it's bedtime. For old people like me. Not that I want to go to bed. I'm not being literal, but you're talking about once the kids are in bed. My wife, she can't stay up. She's going to bed. Now I'm up in the dark watching baseball on my iPad. It's not an experience. I'm watching baseball until 3, 4 in the morning. Well, look, it's the World Series. Thank God it was. Any other game, I would have been asleep, and I would have been out the door.
Yeah.
But I'm watching this, and I'm somebody who I'm local to one of the teams in the game, so I have a specific rooting interest. I can't imagine the common fan around the country, having the wherewithal to stick with that game, because it's not just about how long it takes. It's about the pace. It's about the fact that they don't care that it's taking that long. It could be quicker, but they don't want to do what it takes to take the game and change it and make it something that's going to continue to evolve and be attractive to people in the world we live in today. So I'm looking at like a YouTube video today.
Okay.
Of MLB The Show 2018 highlights. Okay. And I shit you not, this is the kind of stuff they're advertising for this game. Here's a clip of Wally the Green Monster. He's the mascot for the Boston Red Sox. Here's a clip where you can watch him dancing on top of the dugout between innings for several minutes.
Yeah, who's going to do that?
Here's a clip where they're advertising that there's a 7th inning stretch during the video game. Here's a clip where they're talking about rain delays. Are you fucking kidding me? I'm playing a video game and you're going to have me sit through a rain delay? Now, I understand you want to get realistic, but let me tell you something. Baseball should be figuring out a way to make the rain delay in real life stop being a thing, because everybody's tuning out. This is not 1977 when there was two, 3 channels on, and if the baseball game was on television, that was the only thing you were going to do that day. People have choices. There are backlogs in our lives, and those backlogs are only going to get bigger, and that's a good thing, because we live in an age where there's so much great stuff being produced, whether it's video games, TV, movies, entertainment, board games are better than ever. There's so much stuff out there to spend your time on that to waste your time watching something drag on when it's not giving you its very best effort is almost an insult. And so that's my biggest takeaway from watching the Red Sox win the World Series, which is a sad, sad, sad state of affairs. Baseball needs to get on board. The fact that they're making their video games mimic this ridiculous lack of effort in real life shows me just how out of touch they are. They think somebody wants to sit through a rain delay. They think that that's the charm of baseball. What's going to be is the reason why baseball goes out of business.
Well, let me ask you, and I don't know the answer to this. I probably would have 10 years ago, but does football in its 12 weeks or whatever, 18 weeks after, when it's all said and done, from beginning to end?
16 games, 17 weeks.
Okay, that's right. So, yeah, because it was, okay. So in all of its time, there's 16 games as opposed to 160 games or whatever, right? And so you have 10% of the number of games. In that 16 weeks regular season, does the NFL make more money than the MLB in their entire season?
Yeah, the NFL makes more money than anybody.
So they found a way to take 10% of the effort of what Major League Baseball does, and people get invested. I would never sit through two different games or two different teams. I wouldn't be invested in more than one baseball team, is my point. I would never, because of the amount of games, the amount of people that you have to pay attention to. It just wouldn't make any sense. So people stick to, but like I'll watch any football game at any given time. There's people who sit at Sunday, they go to the, ritually go see all the football games on every TV, and they care about all of them because it's not the investment isn't the same for a fan. I like I was saying before, I couldn't do fantasy baseball at all because of the amount of investment it would take to truly be good at it. And I think you hit on
that's how much it would take for you to do fantasy, much less actually watch 162 games.
Yeah, and you hit the nail on the head, and I didn't even think about this, but I've casted baseball out of my life. I watched this World Series, but I've had free Major League Baseball MLB TV through T-Mobile for the last 3 or 4 years, and I've probably watched 15 total games outside of the playoffs. So I always try to get involved, and I always start the season. I'm like, oh, this is going to be the year I'm going to get back into baseball. But ever since David Ortiz was hit with steroid accusations, I've been out, and I just don't have the time to sit around and care about 162 games. I'll watch 16, 18, 20. I'll watch that, and I'll care. That's why I think, in my young age, I was never into football, and in my older age, I am. Maybe that's the trend in general, though. Maybe baseball caters more to kids and football caters more to adults because of the time it takes to invest. Not that either can't be in the other,
I think so. If you're in college and you've got time to burn, you can go to the park every night or something like that. Or if you're retired or you're independently wealthy, and I understand that there's something to be said for, baseball being this kind of throwback, it's kind of the antithesis of the modern world. It's the only game that doesn't have a clock and all of that stuff. And, I understand that there's maybe a certain nostalgic appeal to saying, I like the fact that there's a game out there that, is kind of the opposite of the hurry up lifestyle we're all living these days. So if somebody argues and says, hey, I like baseball the way it is, that's fine. I'm not going to say that you're wrong. I'm just saying, take a look at the modern world, take a look at what's successful with the masses. And if I was a betting man, would I invest my money today in Major League Baseball? If I could buy a franchise in any one sport, would I buy my franchise in baseball? Not if I was smart.
Not anymore. Yep. So just to throw this out there, and one, I didn't realize that the kickoff was prior to 8:30. I thought it was 8:30. And I guess it was 8:20.
Oh, they kick off. It's fine. Don't worry about it.
Okay, so we're looking at already a 7-0 lead by the Patriots. So Joe, if you're listening, there it is, right there. Tom Brady I think he just got his 4 yards he needed to get his 1,000 rushing. So Vince McMahon is talking about he already put in the paperwork to rekindle the XFL, and I loved it when it was out, but just because I love that kind of shit, I'm a risk taker, so I love seeing people take risks like that. And I also love what NFL provides, but there's obviously a market bigger than what NFL provides, because it's when the tickets are so expensive that people still are lining up to buy them, and they can't get rid of them fast enough, or the other way around. They get rid of them too fast, and so they could raise the ticket prices even higher in most markets and still make the money. It's crazy. Football is so popular, so I can understand why Vince McMahon would want to get into that. But what if, right? This is just a hypothetical here. What if he created like an XMLB, right, where the first base coaches had gear on and they could they could tackle or they could get involved, right? They could stop these guys from catching the ball and shit.
Well,
and
the thing is, you could do something like that, but it's actually funny you mentioned that. As you're saying that, I'm wondering, why would Vince McMahon think he needs to make a better version of the game that is currently the one that is more popular than anything on the planet? Like, NFL is winning all over the place. He should be going after one of these other sports instead of the NFL. You're absolutely right.
But the reason, if you ever watched that did you ever see the XFL behind the scenes? They did like a documentary on it 2 years ago, I think, on ESPN or something.
I never spent a minute on the XFL, and I won't spend a minute on the next one, which is
the documentary.
I'm not sure it's a good idea.
The documentary is actually good to watch from a WWE fan. The documentary is good because you get to see what went down behind the scenes and stuff, kind of like a Beyond the Mat, but for the XFL. And they go into, so he basically partnered up with somebody who kind of didn't believe in him, didn't believe he could do it. And he didn't have the full, it was him and NBC, right? It wasn't just him. It wasn't his baby, it was their baby. So when they wanted to fold it, he couldn't stop them. He couldn't stop them from calling it a day. So the reason it's interesting to watch is because that pissed him off. And Vince McMahon in real life you don't mess with him. And so he got messed with by the executives at NBC. They didn't believe in him, and they took away what he was working on and didn't give him a second chance or didn't give him more than a season to try to finalize it. And he wanted more. He wanted to try to perfect it. And they were just messing with him to the point where somebody emptied the gas tanks and the generators and during one of their biggest events, and the cameras went out. And everyone laughed on TV, ha ha ha. Look at Vince McMahon floundering, but it was probably sabotage. Now he'd get sued for suggesting it, but somebody left the gas out, in these big events. Maybe someone made a mistake, but when you watch the documentary, you're like, okay, well, regardless of whether or not it was sabotage, he had more to give in that environment in his mind, whether or not you or anybody else thought it was worth it. He had this idea and he wants to complete it. So I think over the last 15 years, it's been something in the back of his mind. Like, what if I just went back at it and had full control? I don't know. Personally, I'd watch it.
Yeah, I wish him luck. I don't know, man. I just feel like we're talking about sports and some leagues that don't seem to get it. The NFL gets it, and whether all their players are going to be dead from concussion problems in 15 years is another question. But as far as keeping people entertained, they've got it down. So I'm not sure that anybody's looking for an alternative to the XFL. And unless they're going to offer twice the amount of money, I'm not sure how they're going to get the best players.
Yeah, I don't think that, just like what happened before, I don't think that it's going to be anything that anyone's looking for, but I think he's going to provide it. But they're saying they're not going to play around like they did before. It ain't going to be he hate me versus this guy or that guy. It's going to be, supposedly, it's going to be legit football with no extra bullshit. And we'll see. We'll see what happens.
If it's going to be legit football, then it's going to be legit football with the
second-tier players
who couldn't make an NFL roster. So it's not going to be that great.
I'm with you there. What else was there anything else going on in the sports world? Oh, okay. Who's your picks for football? Who are you thinking looks the strongest out of the teams that you were talking about?
Oh boy. Well, I'll tell you what, I mean, today, earlier today, the Saints beat the Rams, and that's the Rams' first loss on the season. And, when you talk about some of these teams that are just on top right now, any one of them could come out on any different, on any given Sunday. When you live in New England, you've learned not to underestimate the Patriots, even if they look like they've got problems and they don't look as sharp as past years. We've all learned to stop doubting the Patriots up here. If I was unbiased and I was just looking at the league, I would say that the Kansas City Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes, I mean, they just look so ridiculous. The fact that the Pats were able to beat them was like a minor miracle, and that game took place in New England. Now I'm looking at the Chiefs and I'm looking at their schedule the rest of the way. They have to lose a couple games here, or they're going to have home field advantage.
Yep.
And if the Patriots had to play that game again against the Chiefs, but at Arrowhead Stadium, I don't know that the Patriots pulled that game out. So if I had to take a team right now and put my money on it, I'd put my money on the Chiefs, just because this is the league. The NFL. Like we said, they've figured out what people want to see, and people want to see exciting plays. They want to see points on the board. They've changed a lot of the rules over the last several years to make it so that if you've got dynamic players on offense, it's really, really hard for the defense to stop you without there being a penalty on the defense. And the Chiefs understand this, and they've got the fastest guys on the planet running all over the field, and a quarterback who, until he breaks his legs one day, he's going to be running all over the place and just chucking the ball all over the place. And, I don't know that anybody can keep up with the Chiefs, especially if they're going to be playing at home in the playoffs.
So Patrick Mahomes, right? This guy is he's a phenom.
He looks like I would say he looks like the second coming, but he kind of right now he looks like the first coming. Like
23 years old.
Year.
Man.
I mean, last year was technically his rookie season, but he only played one game. This is his first year, and he's on pace right now to set the record for everything. Basically, I mean, he's gonna have the most touchdowns passes ever in a season, unless something goes off the rails here. And
holy shit, he's already got
a young kid in his first year.
He's got 29 touchdowns.
Unbelievable. He's made for the moment.
Oh, I lost you, I think. You still there?
He just looks like he is made for the modern NFL. He can run all over the place. He can chuck the ball all the way down the field, further than anybody else. He's got a cannon for an arm. He does not go down. And in today's NFL, where you can't rough the passer, you can't tackle the quarterback by the legs,
he's going to be healthy for a while.
He's unstoppable.
He has 29 touchdowns this season and for passing, and 2 touchdowns rushing through 9 games. That's sick. And he's 23 years old. So
he's on pace for like 60 touchdowns. I mean, it's unbelievable.
So your sophomore year of high school, this guy was born. Nuts. Oh man. So wow. Okay. So that's a team to look at. I'm going to pay more attention to the Chiefs. I haven't really been paying attention to them at all, other than just looking at them kicking ass every week. So I'll keep an eye out for Mahomes here and follow his story, because that's pretty sick. What about what's basketball looking like? Season's over, right? No, season's just starting, right? With we got the Lakers have that bad comparison to Michael Jordan.
Well, yeah, in basketball, again, up here in New England, it's kind of embarrassment of riches, because all of our teams are at least contending. The Celtics have, they were in the Final Four of the NBA last year, and that was without Kyrie Irving and Gordon Hayward being on the team. So those guys coming back from injury this year, there's a lot of excitement. Toronto actually added a real top caliber player in Kawhi Leonard this year. So all of a sudden now Toronto looks really, really good. They were really, really good last year, but because it was Toronto, everybody just kind of knows that Toronto can't win in the playoffs. So nobody's ever taken them seriously. But with a proven NBA Finals MVP like Kawhi Leonard on the team, you have to take them seriously now. And over in the West, everything's just about the Golden State Warriors. You've got the Rockets, but if you're asking me, the Rockets almost beat the Warriors last year. I kind of look at that as a fluke. I think the Warriors can turn on the Jets anytime they want to, and when they do, they can't be beat. And now that the Rockets put Carmelo Anthony on their team, any chance they had of winning went out the window, because Carmelo Anthony is a born loser who will never win anything. That's not my opinion. That's just actually a fact. But when it comes to the NBA in this era, until that team breaks up, it's just about the Golden State Warriors. They are
they're
a
sick.
dynasty. in
Yeah.
a era where dynasties don't exist. And it's just a question of whether somebody's going to, you know, score a tremendous upset by knocking them out or not, or if they're going to have an injury or something. But as long as they're healthy, that team is, it's the most talented. I mean, look, let's be honest about it. You know, you have to compare everything by eras, but they're the most talented basketball team that's ever existed. You know, if you take the dynasties from the 60s, the dynasties from the 80s, those players were great and everything, but they also played in a different time. You know, today's athletes are bigger, they're stronger, they're better. You know, there's better training, there's better, analytics. These kids grow up training from birth, some of them. So it's a whole different thing compared to, the earlier days of the game. The players that are playing in the NBA right now, they're just bigger, stronger, faster, better. And if you take a look at the talent, the shooting, they just don't miss when they don't want to. The Golden State Warriors are probably the most talented basketball team of all time.
When you look at Stephen Curry and the magic that guy can put up, it's amazing to see and he's a little guy for the people around him, and I don't know, man. I don't watch a whole lot of basketball, but when I do, I'm with you on this. I watched the Golden State Warriors in the finals, and just am amazed at some of the plays that they make. They're so in sync with each other. Again, I defer to Stephen Curry's skill set because not too many people in their careers can hit for the percentages that he hits from outside the line, and it's not just him. And that's what's cool about the Golden State Warriors. It's funny because they weren't really much, growing up, and now it's every year you just see it. And I'm looking at the standings right now. We're 10 games in, and it looks like the Warriors topping off the West with Denver right behind them. And again, it's the same teams. You got Golden State, Denver, and San Antonio, top three. On the East, you got Milwaukee, Toronto, and Indiana, and Boston following up on the fourth. But it's super early. But what you don't see Miami, right? Because they don't have LeBron James. They don't have that top three, the big three anymore. And you don't see Cleveland. They're 1-8. They don't have LeBron, right? So they don't have that big guy anymore. And then you don't see Los Angeles Lakers, and they have LeBron, and they're 4-5. So what's going on here? Is LeBron just not pulling his weight yet? Getting used to it? Is it too tough for him out there in LA, or is it just getting started?
Well, look, if you put LeBron James on a team full of crap, not crap, but they're guys who still the guys who have talent on that team still have to learn how to play as part of a real team that's got talent. You can surround LeBron James with role players, but they've really gone with more youth in LA. Outside of bringing in a bunch of veteran guys like Rondo and other people like this who are just past their prime. So, I think it's just going to take some time for LeBron James to get up to speed. I do expect that LA will end up being one of the final, one of the top 8 teams that makes the playoffs. I don't think LeBron James is going to let them sink, long term too far. But, just because, I think there was a big difference before. In the East, there's just less talent than there is in the West. And so you could put LeBron James on the Cleveland Cavs, and you could give him 1 or 2 decent players and a couple of role players, and he could actually make that work and still get to the finals. The West has there's just more talent. When, in the NBA, guys really like being on the West Coast. They finagle themselves to be able to get onto those teams because they want to be in the South and they want to be in the West. They like the warm weather. And that's just a fact.
Yep.
There's more talent out there, and the road is a lot harder when you're playing in the West. So that same team, you put LeBron James in the East, maybe he's at 500 right now, maybe he's sitting right in the middle of the playoff picture. Right now, LA looks like they're struggling because you can't get away with that talent level over in the Western Conference.
Those are some good points, definitely. I think I'll probably pay a little bit more attention this season. I like watching basketball. It's just fun. And plus the video games associated with basketball, in my opinion, are bar none the best looking. I mean, I know FIFA, I know NHL, I know Madden. They all look great. They look great in this modern day of sports games. But in my opinion, I remember sending you a video of NBA 2K 15, I think it was. We're talking years ago. And I sent you a clip that came out of that game that just looked like real life. It was the Michael Jordan game, and like the version that had him on the cover. And I think that came up like not too long ago on my remember this day type thing. And the clip still looks phenomenal. Now, the reason I backed away from playing, I don't watch a lot of basketball these days, but I actually, the last sports game I played was the NBA 2K series because I enjoy playing the basketball games and stuff, and they look so good. I mean, they're just absolutely crisp. The sounds are good, the movement is good, and they're getting even better every year. But it was a couple of years ago, NBA 2K14 it was. I was in the middle of a season, and I don't play the same year that the game comes out, so it's like a year later, and I'm playing my season, and they shut off the servers, and I couldn't play locally. I couldn't play a game that I owned because they turned off the servers so that the game could no longer exist. And it's like, what the fuck? Like, my season is over
Time to
because
buy a new game.
Yeah, and you have to buy the next game. So while you buy a game that I physically owned the disc, it was in my hand, but I couldn't play it. I couldn't play my season. I could play exhibition matches, but I couldn't play my season. It had to be connected to the internet, and they told me my season was over and to buy NBA 2K15. And I was like, I'm not going to do that ever again. They burned me. I'll never.
Yeah, that's not a good move.
Yeah, I'll never in my lifetime buy an NBA 2K game. I might buy, if a different company comes along and gets the license, but they made a bad decision there. And that's what happens in a lot of these games. You buy, and from system to system too, like I'm hoping that they learn from mistakes, but money is money. I want the Sony PlayStation 5 to allow me to play my backlog of games because I buy almost every one of my games digitally. It's a digital license. I know that the risk of taking that is that they could shut the service down and I lose it, but I prefer it because I like to be able to just go and say, hey, you know what? I want to download that game right now and just go download it. And if I don't want to, I don't have to worry about my discs getting scratched. I don't have to worry about losing them or anything like that. It's just there. Any system I go to, my game can be downloaded and I can play it. I want the PlayStation 5 to allow me to access my PlayStation 4 library and play those games on the PlayStation 5 because there's no reason it shouldn't. The system going from system to system shouldn't dictate what games can go in it. The next version should be better than the previous one in this modern day, and you should be able to play the previous games on it if you have the digital license to do so. And if that's the case, I'd buy the PlayStation 5 day one, and I would just play my backlog on the PlayStation 5. Now, I know reality is they're not going to do that. They're going to say, oh, you want to buy Red Dead Redemption 2 for PlayStation 5? You're going to have to pay the $60 again. And that's what happened from the 3 to the 4. I assume it'll happen from the 4 to the 5. It happened with Microsoft, Xbox. But now you see in Microsoft, they do backwards compatibility. So every couple of months, they release some new games for the backwards compatible series, and you can throw that disc in and potentially play it. And sometimes they look a little bit better because they're upscaled for the new graphics and all that. But Sony didn't do it, and I've turned into a Sony guy over the last 4 or 5 years because of the PlayStation 4. But yeah, they're turning into money hungry people. It's interesting. I mean, I understand that's what the business is all about, but the fan base, when they see that, it goes. I mean, a lot of people bitch about EA and what they do to the game companies. They buy game companies and then they basically destroy them. And they don't, they have so much money. It's like Google. Google comes around and buys a company and it's like, you know what? We don't really need that. And then they just dissolve it. And all those people that had jobs or people who like those applications, they don't get to have those applications anymore because Google bought it and dissolved it. Well, the EA does that too. They buy game companies and they say, oh, we like this series. And then, oh, that's expensive to upkeep or we don't sell enough of those. So they're gone. And then now this like game series that you're invested in that you just want the next version of is no longer in existence because the company doesn't exist and EA sure as shit ain't putting a new company in there to rebuild something that they trashed. Companies are doing that left and right. Mobile market is turning into like the most lucrative. Like Fortnite, even when they dipped into the mobile and they got on iPhones and Androids, they're making hundreds of millions of dollars a day, and a lot of it's coming from mobile. And it sucks to play on mobile. It's not fun to play on mobile, but Epic Games isn't gonna change their ways because it's not fun. They're gonna try to make it the best experience they can on the mobile device so that people keep buying it because it's the cheapest to maintain. It's the cheapest to build for. It's the lowest resolution graphics. And I know our phones are getting better every year and more capable, but these video games, I mean, when you see certain games and like people are playing on keyboards with like 40 buttons, you cannot translate that to a mobile device. So you're just not going to get the same game. And it sucks because there's more money in it because, my kid can come grab my phone and hit buy, right? That's what happened with Rovio. And that's how Angry Birds and those companies, I'm sorry, not Rovio, Candy Crush, King. That's the company that took over Angry Birds. Candy Crush was making $4 billion a year for a free game because people were buying those gems that would unlock, like, you could, if you lost your amount of turns, you didn't want to wait. Kind of like Travian. We talked about that on this podcast a while back, what that was and everything. And these games that incentivize like buying gems to continue playing. It's genius marketing. It sucks for the actual core gamers who love to see quality products. So when we have a game like Spider-Man or Witcher or these companies that put out games that don't require you to be online, games that are a full game at the time of purchase, and then they continue to add on to it, and it doesn't feel like you're not buying the complete game when you first buy it. Those things are starting to become like few and far between. And games as a service, games as a service is becoming the thing. Like, hey, you want Madden? Well, if there's trades, you got to be subscribed to our season, and you can get the updated. Well, back in the day, you could just download the frickin' roster at any given time, and now you can't. You have to be part of the EA Access badge or whatever. It's just ridiculous. Knowing and being in the tech side of things, knowing how delivery of that type of stuff is pretty simple. It's just a money grab, and I hate seeing that. So, that being said, it's a crazy, crazy world we're in where we just want to see better games and things like that. Because if we're going to take our time and dedicate it to a series or to even when it's just one game, $60, you want it to be that full-fledged experience. You want that baseball game to be, you want the rain delays. You want snow days, right? You want to sit through that. No, I'm just kidding. You don't want that, but no, but you want the game to be good and a full experience. So
yeah, and that's where it comes down to. You got to support, whatever the world is you want to live in. You got to support it.
Yeah.
If somebody's releasing, if a company's releasing the kinds of games you're talking about, you got to support that company, and you got to buy their games because if they're not making money on that model, they're going to stop with that business model. So if there's a certain type of world you want to live in, money talks. And that's, like you said, there's a reason why these companies like King are pushing out all these free mobile games with shit graphics, and they're all the same exact game where they change 3 sprites and you're just playing the same game over and over again every 3 minutes for, 6 hours a day. Some of these people, there's no creativity there. And, there's a reason for it. It's because people are hitting that button, they're hitting that buy, they're buying those extra gems, those extra lives, and they're making a killing off of it with a very low investment. So if you want people to put the time and the effort and the energy and the creativity into making these wide scope, all encompassing games that really do, the kind of games that stay with you. When you talk to people who've been gaming for a long time, take a look at take for example, we talking about the PlayStation Classic, right? And what's the very first game that they're advertising on the announcement about that game coming out? The PlayStation Classic
Final Fantasy,
console.
right?
Final Fantasy VII.
Yep.
Final Fantasy VII's game comes out in the late 90s. People who played Final Fantasy VII still remember the character names. They still remember the music from that game. They still remember what happened at the end of that game and some of the plot that happened. That game bothered. It put the effort in, and it stays with people. It's an experience that stays with you. Who's ever going to remember that gnarly game of Candy Crush from a couple weeks ago? Man, I'll never forget that game of Candy Crush when I hit that line and then the jewels fell. And then I immediately just kept doing the exact same thing for the next 5 hours. When somebody puts the effort in, there's actually the opportunity for the user to have an experience that stays with them it's just a game, but it can still be meaningful. It can be something you remember.
And that goes to all aspects of entertainment.
Yeah, I think that if you want games like that to exist, if you want to live in a world where there's a video game that you can talk to somebody else about and you can have a shared experience because you both played this game and you both remember how much it stayed with you, then you got to go out. You got to make sure you're paying attention and supporting the gaming companies that are out there trying to produce those types of games.
Yep. And then you take like Blizzard, who you've heard of Diablo, right?
Sure.
So Diablo just had Blizzard had the BlizzCon event the other day, and we'll just touch on this briefly and then finish up with the last topic of the day. But so Blizzard had the BlizzCon, and everyone's been waiting. What's next? What's next? What's next? Like Diablo has been something that everyone's been waiting for. The new generation of Diablo 4 or something, right? And they had this big event. They got all their BlizzCon fans out there. And the guy gets up on stage and he's like, mobile gaming has revolutionized. So the next installment of Diablo is Diablo Immortal for mobile only. And everyone's like, wait, what? So then like they did a Q&A and somebody's like, hey, question for you. You said this is mobile only. Do you have any anticipation of bringing this to the consoles or the computer? And he's like, nope, this is a mobile only experience. And the fucking crowd, it was like, boo, like huge boos. And online, it has been so negatively received because the gaming community doesn't want that. Now, little Jimmy over there, 7-year-old Jimmy, is going to download it, right? It's Diablo. It's so cool. It's on my phone, my mom's phone. But the people who play Diablo, who've been playing it for 15 to 20 years, 30 years, I don't even know how long it's been, a while. Those people don't want a fucking mobile game. They don't want a mobile game. Maybe a cool one on the side, like a companion version. But they've just killed their entire company. I mean, everyone's like trashing Blizzard, which has been nothing but a solid, just a really good company in the gaming industry for the last 15 to 20 years with World of Warcraft and all that stuff. They've even going back as far as StarCraft and Warcraft 1 and 2 and 3. They just put out quality titles every time they do, and it's always got this huge player base. Well, I think the player base, these people are starting to just get sick of it. You know, if you're going to, that's what you're going to put your money into, is this money grab. They know that it's going to be these quick buy things, buy gems to continue playing and bullshit. That's not what the people who are core gamers on these types of genres are into. So,
well, and the thing is, it's not like you can't do both. It's lazy for them.
Yes.
Look, if they want to make some money, I don't know. I don't begrudge them that. Make your money. But take a look at like Madden football, right? Yep. If you go and they'll try to sell you for $5 you can download Madden on your phone. And I looked at it, I'm like, hey, Madden right on my phone, the whole game, holy crap. No, it's like a card game.
Yep, it's not the same.
So that's not the same thing as playing a season of NFL football, realistically, which I can do on a console. So if you told me that Madden wants to make a card game version, they want the jewels, but it's Madden players from all the Patriots and the Packers falling down from the sky. I don't give a shit. You want to make some money, go make some money. That's fine. But don't tell me that that's the replacement for Madden, right? So it sounds like Blizzard is essentially doing that. Like they could have just like made a mobile game and said, we want to make a mobile game, but no, they're doing it instead of providing their loyal customers with the thing that made them popular in the first place.
And when the fan base realized that, because they basically asked that, is this the only thing coming out for Diablo? And like the guy's like, yes, we're putting all of our eggs in this basket. And the crowd was like, well, fuck those eggs, because we don't want it. And so, and people will download it. That's the sad part, is in all these things, people will download it, they'll give it a shot, they'll try it, but it's not the same thing. It's not the experience that they're looking for. So maybe it'll be cool. Maybe they put a lot of money into it. Maybe it's revolutionary. Give the fans what they want. And you're right. They could be doing both. They have enough money. They definitely have enough money from World of Warcraft subscriptions alone still to put the money where they need to. But going into kind of what you were saying prior, when you have a genre or a game or something that you want to support, you got to. And I talk a lot on this podcast about virtual reality. I know Joe doesn't, he's not as invested, but all my life growing up, it was something that I always kind of wanted to be a part of. I wanted to get the virtual Game Boy. We couldn't afford it. I wanted, or Virtual Boy, sorry. We couldn't afford that, so we never had that growing up. But I wanted, the Power Glove. We had that, and it just wasn't as cool as it was supposed to be. And then later on in life, they always talked about like virtual reality, and you see like Lawnmower Man type graphics. Well, now we're here, right? We're in the first true generation of virtual reality games. You have 3 or 4 different devices. You have some of these little mobile devices and things as well that can still deliver some decent virtual reality experiences. And we're starting to see some amazing stuff. Now, I have no problem investing in things in virtual reality that a lot of people wouldn't, because I want that genre to continue. I want it to stay alive. I want to support the developers who are putting something out there. Now, there are definitely developers who put out junk and trash, right? And anywhere you go, there's definitely developers not doing what they need to be doing to make a quality game. But then you have people like a random Joe Schmo who's also just interested. They go get the materials they need to create a virtual reality game, and they put something together. And maybe it's not the best game you've ever played, right? If every game was the best game you'd have ever played, you'd only need a couple of games on the market. It has to be filled with top to bottom, right? You have to have the crap, you have to have the mediocre, and you have to have the really good. That's just a bell curve. And so in VR, you're seeing a lot of developers come out and make decent games, good quality games, and very similar to like when the Wii first came out, and they had new peripherals to play with. They had a new dimension. You had 2 controllers that you could wave around and things, and you could play tennis literally in your bedroom. So developers were taking that technology and molding it and coming up with replicas of games or ports of other games or new ideas, and sometimes they fell flat and sometimes they didn't. But you're going to get crap, you're going to get good stuff at the same time. Well, I see a lot of crap and I see a lot of good stuff in the virtual reality world. I know that, again, you can get it on PC. On the PC, there's less standards. You can download or buy a game in the VR space, and there's going to be more games on PC. There's no one prohibiting that game from hitting the market. It can be absolute garbage, and it can hit. Well, the PlayStation has some regulations. So when you have the PlayStation market, and you're trying to get your game into that market, it has to meet certain standards. It has to hit the 60 frames per second. It has to have certain settings so that the people won't get sick and things. So not all developers dive in. Some do, and they just put the base settings, and then their game is trash. So you still get that shovelware, they call it. But my point is, I support it. And what's crazy is these games, none of these games are really priced to make these developers a lot of money. We're seeing $3 to $5 for games, free for some games, with no purchase incentive. You're just downloading these experiences that people are making. And then you see like the most expensive games, for the most part, are like $40. And there's been a couple, only a handful, that hit that $60 mark. And those ones are full-fledged games usually. But when a game comes out and it's $30 to $40, in my opinion, that's a deal if it's a good game. And the way that the market is for, I see a lot of people bitching about it. Oh, that's $40? Are you fucking kidding me? And it's like, what? Wait a second here. These are people who are dedicating like sometimes millions of dollars into a game to try to make a quality product for you, and you're just like shitting on it because you don't even want to give it a chance. I think game companies should do a better job of providing demos or short, 1 hours of gameplay, because if they want to stand by their game, they're gonna give you a chance to play it before you can buy it to see if it's worth it. And the game companies, they should make that easier to do. And then the game companies that choose not to do that, those are the ones you got to stay away from and urge them to do it. Yeah. Because demos of your game, I mean, we used to be able to go rent a game for $3 and try it, and then you buy it. And now it's like, everything, they bake everything into the pre-purchase. Like, oh, you get different characters or this or that if you buy it early. And it's turned out that that's not the best way to do things. You don't pre-order. Wait a day or two. Find out what the real reviews are from players, not people being paid to give a review. And so this leads me into the last topic of the day. And I know we're running long here, but this has been a great podcast so far. The most important topic, in my opinion, is Tetris Effect for virtual reality and for flat, right? That they decided this is Tetris weekend. So they gave everyone the opportunity to download this game for free and play the first 3 zones for free in virtual reality or regular, and they stand by their game. And this is a game, I think the price is $40, and if you're a PlayStation Plus member, it's $35 or something like that. And I've heard people bitch about that price, and maybe so, right? Maybe so, because you can download Tetris for free, but I am telling you, and I'm going to stand by this, the game that you download on your phone or your computer does not hold a fucking candle to the game that you can play in virtual reality. I have played it. I'm in a group of people who are playing a little competition this weekend to see who could get the best score out of those 3 levels. There is no comparison to playing a flat version of Tetris to playing a virtual reality version of Tetris. And I'm going to explain a little bit here real quick why that is. So they all know the Tetris effect is that phenomenon that they've talked about, to where even people who are mentally handicapped, who have no ability to remember things, have been able to recall shapes and sounds from the game of Tetris. And it's a true thing. It's a true phenomenon that they've been able to do. And it's not just Tetris, right? Other things could potentially do that and embed these images and these feelings like the regular game of Tetris can do. But it's scientifically something that your brain remembers, even if you don't have that capability of remembering or things like that. So mentally handicapped people who have no ability to remember can remember. It's called the Tetris effect. True study that really happened. And you take that game and you put it into, now you're inside. When you put this virtual reality headset on, you're inside of a different place. It's not just like, hey, I'm putting a mask on and it's all dark over here. You are now consumed by the environment. So some games do this very well. Some games do this horribly wrong. But Tetris has done it right. It's just a void. You're in this void of space where particles from the game board are around you. And they're integrating these particles with the music. And they're integrating the music with the game. So not only are they tapping into this subconscious that's been proven by science, proven by studies, they're pulling it in and using the other senses, the vision, the stimulants of sound, the stimulants of these amazing visuals. I mean, it is like some of the coolest particle effects you've ever seen, and they're so well done. And the audio goes with the gameplay, as fast or as slow as you play. And it's all integrated into this experience so that you just focus. You just focus on the board. And the board itself is the same thing that you know and love. It's a Tetris board. You can choose how far away it is from you. You can choose how close up to your face it is. And there's also other settings to where you can change the color of the bricks. You can change how many bricks, of the next bricks you can see, and things like that. But the people who are saying, oh, $40 for this game, that's bullshit. No, they have taken one of the most iconic games in the history of all video games ever, and they've decided to build it out to an experience that is unlike any experience that you will ever try. And then they've made it better somehow. They've made a game better, and all they're asking is that you support that. I don't think that $40 for one of the most iconic titles in history, revamped with new graphics, new style, new gameplay for a new console style, the VR. I don't think that that's asking too much. And so now with that introduction, I want to kind of just jump over to you, Jeremy, because out of all the games ever in your life, we've talked about this on the podcast with Darren a couple weeks ago too. I've never seen something so. I've never enjoyed watching somebody else play a game like I enjoy watching you play Tetris. And I know it's been a long time, but this thing, do you get that phenomenon? Do you understand that? Is that something you thought of before because you were so?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, like if you've been playing, you kind of have to. It's very similar to the. I mean, this is going to sound like a ridiculous comparison, but to me, it's very similar to the Grand Theft Auto comparison. If you play Grand Theft Auto for like 6 straight hours, right, and then get behind the wheel of a car,
oh yeah,
you better be fucking careful, because if you can easily forget that you're not supposed to just like swerve off and look for a ramp. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm with you there.
Whatever. I mean, like the game becomes like, kind of embedded in your head to where you look somewhere else and you're still kind of seeing things in that same way. So with Tetris, if you're playing Tetris for a while, you're walking up the stairs and you're trying to figure out how the blocks fill up the stairway.
Yeah.
I think that you make a great point about the $40. When it comes to today's world, people are conditioned to think that games are free, and that it's ridiculous for somebody to charge you $40 for a game where, like you said, where they've actually put the effort and the development into the game. Now, there's a couple things at play here. These gaming companies, I don't know how they do it. They need to get their marketing straight. They need to figure out, okay, first of all, like we said with Fortnite, it's important to be putting out a product that is offering something that your audience cares about and wants. You have to be giving them a reason to care. Okay, you're doing that. Now they also need to figure out how they can market to a world where people think that games should be free. And what they don't understand is that, they're being tricked. And if you add it all up, and every time they press here's $1 to buy 3 more plays of Candy Crush or whatever it is, by the time they get to the end of that year, they've spent more than $40 on Candy Crush. And you could have bought a game that you have infinite use of for $40. That's better. But you think, well, why would I ever spend $40 on a game? I'd rather spend it $1 at a time every 2 days for the rest of my life. It doesn't make any sense. And I don't know how they do it. They've got to try to educate the consumer about that. Or they have to try to figure out that those are not the same consumers. Sometimes somebody's going to be a phone casual consumer, and they're not the type of person who's going to be a game consumer.
I think that's why it scares consumers when they see a company like Blizzard, who has been nothing but a gaming company that provides full, complete packages of games, dive into this mobile market. I think that's, as a consumer, people are scared. They're like, okay, you're supposed to be the one telling us not to do that. You're supposed to be the one telling us, don't go down that road. Buy our games because they're the best complete package. And now all of a sudden you see, get this free Diablo game on your iPhone.
Well,
and you're like,
they've got to figure it out. They've got to figure out how to market and educate the consumer, because, people are going to be manipulated. That's what marketing is all about. So right now, the other guys are doing a better job of marketing. They're doing a better job of manipulating the audience to feel and think a certain way. So it's up to them to step up their game in that regard. Now, here's the other thing about VR games in particular. If you're over 30 years old, and you touched on this, I'm a perfect example. You grow up in a world where virtual reality was something that they've been talking about since you were born. And every time you've tried it, it might have been cool for a minute, but it was not the actual, the word reality was really kind of a misnomer. Everything that was VR was stepped in the right direction of figuring out how to do this stuff, but it was never something where you were actually going to feel immersed in a real way.
Yeah, like you don't feel like you're in a different world. You have a headset on. You know that you're playing this game as opposed to being in that world.
Right, and what I'm saying is, for the last 30 years, that's what it's been like. Okay, they would put a Samsung phone inside of a fucking cardboard box, tell you to strap that to your head, and this is a real thing. I went over a friend's house one time. He's like, "Oh, here, I'm going to show you. This is virtual reality. It's absolutely amazing, and it's a Samsung phone 2 inches in front of your face, in front of a cardboard box wrapped around your ears. And he's like, it's like being in another world. And yeah, it was cool that you could achieve that good of an effect with that cheap of a situation. But at no time did I actually feel like, oh no, I think I've been transported to another world. What I'm here to tell people out there right now is that if you have not been paying attention, if you've kind of given up on VR and you haven't been looking at it, the stuff that they're putting out now, they have finally jumped that rail. They have figured out how to get to that next step. And I know it's going to continue to improve, but they've, but whatever that phrase is that I'm looking for, they've crested the wave. They've figured it out. They've passed the point of no return. VR is for real now. But when it's good VR and it's done right, it is that mind-blowing, transporting experience where you can actually, if you want to, allow yourself to feel like you are somewhere else while you're playing the game.
That's a huge point too, is that like you have to allow yourself to, like, I think for intelligent people, and I know that sounds weird, but I think most of us who are playing these games and stuff, you have to be pretty intelligent to play a lot of video games and stuff. And so most people who put on the headset, like, they understand that when they put that headset on and say they're playing a walk the plank or something, right? They know they're not going to fall. You know in your head, there's no way you're going to fall because you're in your bedroom and you have a fucking headset on. But it still feels like you're going to fall. Right? For example, if you go and you see the shark experience and you go underwater, you know you're not going to drown because you're not in underwater. Now, some people don't know that. And I've seen, and I'm not going to name names, but I've seen people who've put on my headset act like the experience is literally legit. And it's silly, it's silly because it's just a video game. But that's what this thing can accomplish for somebody who doesn't know better than to realize or recognize that this isn't reality. Like, okay, so when I put the headset on Jagger for the first time ever, and I was sitting next to him and I was trying to explain to him verbally what was going on, he's like, "Where are you? Where did you go?" And I'm like, "I'm sitting right here. This is a video. You're watching and he's like, No, you're not here with me." And he was panicking. He was like freaking out. He didn't understand. He didn't know. And he's like 4 at the time or 5. Like, and I get it because his intelligence was limited to understanding like the reality. It's capable of hitting that level. On the flip side, for those who know better, right, who know they're not walking down a plank or are going to fall off a ledge, you have to allow yourself to be immersed to understand that's what the game wants you to feel. It wants you to feel like you're going to fall. So, real quick, a couple of experiences that I have to talk about is that what is it called? So there's a game where you're in zero gravity, and I can't think of the name of it right this second, but you're in zero gravity and you move the controller, any of the different things that allow you to move. If you move them at all, there's no resistance, there's no stopping, right? So you can't ever stop and stay still. You're always moving some direction because it's a zero gravity environment. And the first time I put it on and I'm playing it and I'm like, yeah, I mean, I know I'm sitting in my room, but whoa, that feels weird. Whoa, that feels, holy shit. And then if you play it for long enough, you kind of forget you're sitting in your bedroom and you start to realize that your brain is now like just doing everything it can to keep up with this experience that's going on because it's so immersive. And then you start to get the controls and you start to understand how to play a little bit. And there's not a lot to this game in that sense, but your mind, if you allow it, you can get into this immersion. I was playing a game called Farpoint, and for the first 2 hours, I know, I'm standing in my bedroom and firing this gun. Well, eventually you get to a point where you're fighting humanoids as opposed to spiders, and Crystal came over to let me know dinner was ready, just as a humanoid literally popped up in front of me to scare the shit out of me, and she tapped me on the shoulder, and it absolutely ravaged my brain. Like, it just was one of those moments where I was immersed into this video game, and I completely forgot about the outside world because I was so focused on trying to get these bad guys. And then she touched me in real life, and the senses just triggered. It was like, whoa, what the fuck? And it caused me to like have not a panic attack, but a good one, like a good crazy panic experience. Like that was intense. It was nuts. And to get to that level and realize, you know, she thought it was funny. Oh my God, look at Kevin reacted that way. But to me, it was like, I was there. I was gone out of this world. I was out of my bedroom and my brain had me on this alien planet for real. And so Tetris does that in a way to where you don't even feel like you're anywhere. You're just there. You're just in this environment and you're playing Tetris. And I tried it both flat and I tried it virtual. And flat, I'm not that good at Tetris. I'm okay. I can play for a while, but like in the virtual headset, there's just a level of focus that you can't get on a flat screen. And so I'm not even like a Guitar Hero, right? I always relate you when I watch you play Tetris to like watching a master play Guitar Hero. They're like, these things are coming at the screen so fast. Someone who's observing can't even see what's coming at them. Like I could watch somebody play a Guitar Hero and be like, how the hell are they hitting those buttons perfectly? Like, how do you even see that? I'm not even playing and I can't. But when you get locked into a game of Tetris, you can see these things. You don't even have to look. You can your peripheral vision is being used to see what's coming next. And you're already making 3 steps, 4 steps ahead. But Jeremy, when you were playing in your prime of this, and again, for those who are just tuning in, world record, 2004, 2005-ish time frame, best in the world, Jeremy Lane, Tetris. And so when you're playing a game that's so fast that you can't comprehend it as a viewer, what's going through your mind?
Very little, because you're pretty much just playing it with, it comes to a point where you can understand that there's set number of logical things to do with a piece. And as soon as you see the shape of the piece, you know where it's going, and you just put it there, and you're already looking ahead at the next piece, even as you've trained your fingers to know how to hit the button to make it go where it needs to go. So the actual placing of the piece isn't something you're thinking about doing. You're already, as your fingers are placing that piece, you're already looking at the next piece and figuring out where does it go. So, the thing is that there is sort of a logical, there is a quote unquote right thing to do with every piece that comes down in order to give yourself the best possible outcome for continuing a game of Tetris indefinitely. And of course, like if you want to try to build up your stack and then get Tetrises by eliminating, 4 lines at a time for extra points and style, there's a separate set of rules that exist for having that happen.
We'll get this. So for this new game, there's a thing called the Dodeca Tetris. And I believe it is 16 Tetrises. It might be more than that. But so you get to a point where you build up a meter. And I have yet to figure out how to physically build up this meter. But I know that over playing the game, the meter fills up. And you can hit a trigger to initiate the meter. And it kind of, I don't know if it slows down the time. Maybe it does. It feels like it does. But it kind of slows down the time. And every line you get before the meter runs out counts towards a Tetris or a Dodeca Tetris or whatever, Perfectris. They have all these different names. And so if you get 4, you get a Tetris, but you can get individual lines during this period of time. And it's a very short period of time. But the point is to get the maximum number of points. If we're both playing and the maximum number of lines in a level is 36 lines, how do you get the most points? Well, speed, timing, not messing up, getting T-swings or whatever they call it, like T-flips, where you tuck a piece in to a spot at the last second. Those give you extra bonus points, but this is the best way to do it, is to use this meter and to eliminate as many lines as possible before this meter runs out, and it all counts towards the same Tetris or Dodeca Tetris, and that's how you get the maximum number of points. It adds another dynamic to what you're saying here, because if you're playing to get the Tetris, well, now you might be playing to get the combos. If you go through and you get, for every piece that drops, if you get a line, you're building up a combo. So it's a 2-hit combo, 3-hit combo, 4-hit. If you can get like 10 in a row, even if they're all individual lines, you're getting way more points than if you're just getting a line, placing a block, getting a line, placing a block, getting a line, placing 2 blocks. So they added this is another thing where they add mathematically and scientifically, there's new reasons to try this game to get better at it, because now there's a new dynamic to it. And then you can swap blocks. You can like store one and then retrieve it. So you can, now you're not just seeing what's coming next, but you're also thinking for the future if you want to store something. And so it adds this other dynamic. And being so immersed into this world, it's just so much fun that even as someone who's not that great at playing it, I am enjoying it. Crystal, who doesn't play VR, doesn't play video games, she played it. She liked it. She liked it enough to tell her friend to try it on my PlayStation. And then she asked me about it yesterday and today. Did you play any more Tetris? Like, she enjoyed it. So I can't wait for you to try this version of Tetris.
Oh, I can't wait either. I can't wait. And, it looks amazing. One thing about Tetris is that, Tetris has kind of an interesting dilemma as a brand, because the thing about Tetris that makes it so great is that it's universal. Everybody's played Tetris. It's a very, very simple game. And when it comes to the basics of Tetris, they've never had to change the game. It's like chess, you don't have to change chess to get people interested in chess. So, people will still play chess. Tetris is like that. So they have an interesting dilemma, because if you want to have a game come out and have it be new and fresh and exciting, and you want to charge people $40, you want to give them something new. But at the same time, why do people love Tetris? Because they can pick it up and play right away. Everybody knows how to play Tetris. And a lot of people love Tetris. You can, you pick up a Game Boy, you play Tetris, people still love it, even though it's, an old-fashioned game, right? So the challenge for the game of Tetris, over the years, with all the different platforms and all the different kinds of games they've come out with, sometimes they come out with these new versions of Tetris, and on this version we're going to have 7 different kinds of special lines and bombs and things that flip the screen, and all this kind of things that bend the rules and change the game. And sometimes that can add a little bit to the game, and sometimes it can be a big mistake, because if they get too far away from the basic game of Tetris, they lose the appeal of the game in the first place. I mean, in today's world, I love puzzle games, but are the masses really clamoring for new puzzle games on a regular basis as much as they're clamoring for war games and adventure and RPGs and all that other stuff? No, it's not the highest selling genre, let's face it. The reason why Tetris is going to be popular and people are going to give it a look is because everybody knows Tetris. So what I'm hoping is that they have found the right balance, putting something new out there, giving people some interesting, fun things, but not changing the fundamentals of the game too much, because if they do, people will get confused, and that casual Tetris fan is going to be out.
Yep, I'm with you. And I think that they, on this, in the couple of hours that I've probably played about 3 or 4 hours of Tetris, which I haven't touched in years. I haven't played Tetris in, maybe a little bit here or there, but nothing of any substance in 10 to since you played, probably. And I jumped right in. I enjoyed it. I personally think it's well worth the $40, $35 if you have PS Plus. And I know, Jeremy, you haven't gotten into this generation of video game systems, and we're already probably talking the tail end of it. And we live, a country apart, but somehow you gotta find a way to try it with the virtual reality system. And if it requires me coming up there with my gear, maybe that'll be the way to do it.
Oh, I definitely will. I'll definitely be trying it. And because, as a casual, for myself, as somebody who, loves video games but has trouble finding it, that's why I really want to say for anybody out there who truly has a backlog and isn't able to keep up with video gaming the way they did when they were younger, you really got to take a look at this virtual reality stuff, because I'm telling you, it's not just like better graphics. It's not just, new games with new concepts. All that stuff is great, and we all wish that we had time to try everything. But I'm telling you, it's a whole new generation of gaming, and it's something that you've got to experience. We've been waiting for the future for a long time when it comes to virtual reality, and it's finally here. They're making stuff that's really, can't miss. You have to experience it to understand. And so, I love Tetris. Definitely going to find a way to get my hands on that game and give it a shot. And I can't wait to be inside the board, baby.
Yep, absolutely. Well, Jeremy, I appreciate you taking the time. I know I tricked you into, almost 2 full hours here when I told you it was going to be 30 to 40 minutes, but that seems to be the way to go when we have these good conversations. And, you're welcome anytime. I love the fact that you have been able to join up today. Anyways, thank you so much for joining and filling in while Joe is in the middle of one of the coolest moments of his life, being able to buy a new house and move in and paint it the way he wants. He's going to be back real soon. For the duration of his time away, we will continue to provide insightful and awesome guests. And I think this one was more than fitting, considering Tetris is coming out in just a couple of days, and we had this demo this weekend. So, Jeremy, any last words before we wrap her up?
Well, no, just good luck to Joe. Congratulations. Keep up the good work with the podcast. And, we all got to try to find a way to make time for the backlog.
That's right. Hey, thanks a lot, Jeremy. And you have yourself a good one. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Till next time, I'm Kevin.
I'm Jeremy.
And this is The Backlog Exposed.
Yes, it is.